Now, what the hell is Volare? Well, let's find out. Hello friends, I'm George, the nice smelling gentleman. Welcome back to the channel guys, I hope that all of you are doing well. It's time for your daily dose of some fragrance content, and for today I've prepared a first look at a brand new sub-brand of Lattafa. It's called Volare. They are pretty new to the markets, at least from what I know. And today I'm going to share my initial impressions on 5 of their scents. Now the fragrances that I'm going to talk about today all come from the same line, which is called Reload. And all 5 of them that I'm going to show you are cloning or have been heavily inspired by original scents from Hugo Boss. We have Reload Silver, Reload Intense, Reload Blue, Reload Nuit, and Reload Gold. Now I'm going to quickly go over all 5 scents from Volare and their Reload line and share with you my initial impressions. As I said, all 5 are inspired by original scents from Hugo Boss, and the first one that I'm going to briefly talk about is Reload Silver for Men. This one is inspired by Hugo Boss bottled, the original one from Hugo Boss. Now I'm going to show you quickly the bottle up and close and the packaging, so you can quickly check out at least one of the bottles, because all 5 bottles actually share the exact same design, you know, dimension wise, heft wise, but they have different color combinations. This is how the box of Reload Silver for Men looks. It's a pretty standard looking box. It has sort of on this silver color to it, like the name would suggest. The important things here are 100 ml bottle size and EDP concentration. The production date on all 5 bottles is July of 2024. And then this is the actual design of the bottle. Some of them have this frosted but still transparent design, so you can check out the level of your juice. Some of the others actually are blacked out, so you cannot check the actual level of the fragrance inside. Now, one thing I have to mention, the all caps are metallic, they are metal, and they are quite heavy, and the whole bottle, all of the 5 bottles are really heavy in hand. But as you can see, pretty much almost half of the glass is actually glass and not fragrance. For some reason they went with this design, maybe to give it a little bit more of an upscale look, but it's rather, I don't know, unneeded heft and unneeded thickness of the glass itself. I would have preferred if the bottles are actually smaller and lighter, because you just feel, I just get the feeling of some wasted glass. Maybe they went for this design so that the bottles can look a little bit more upscale. As I said, the first one will be Reload Silver, and this one is inspired by Hugo Boss bottled, the original bottled fragrance. All of them have very decent sprayers. And the scent itself, when it comes to Reload Silver, to be honest, I can't say that they did a very good job with the opening of this fragrance. It feels a little bit synthetic, which is maybe somewhat to be expected because all 5 fragrances are quite cheap, but I'll talk about pricing a little bit later. But a Reload Silver feels a little bit synthetic, and also lacks a bit of the strength of the apple note that the original fragrance is known for. There is an apple note, there's some other, fruity sweetness in here. I think there's a plum note, you get some citruses in the opening, some freshness, bergamot, maybe some greenness from a geranium note, but it lacks the sweetness of the apple note and lacks the strength of the apple note that the original fragrance has. Also, there's a bit of spiciness in here, some cinnamon. You can pick up some sweetness, some woods and some vanillic sweetness. On the dry down, this actually gets a little bit closer to the original fragrance. It becomes a little bit sweeter. The vanillic note is a little bit stronger on the dry down. The woody notes are a little bit stronger on the dry down. This feels like a more fresher take. For me, in the opening, the dominant notes are those citrusy notes. The bergamot note. There's a bit of lemon maybe. So basically the citruses, they overpower a little bit the other fruits, like the apple and the plum note, especially the apple note. It just doesn't feel as strong as the one that you will find with the original fragrance. But again, on the dry down, this actually becomes a little bit closer. It has a bit of a synthetic vibe, which I don't really appreciate that much. Maybe because this is a brand new bottle. I literally opened it up in 2 days ago, so maybe it needs a bit of time to sit around and maybe mature the scent itself, to mature a little bit. But I can't say that this is a very, very good clone. Maybe they went for maybe some citrusy twist in the opening. Maybe they didn't try to strictly clone the original fragrance, but I cannot say that I'm hugely impressed by how close this is to the original one. The next one that I'm going to talk about will be Reload Intense. This one is inspired by Boss Bottled Intense, and actually in here this feels a lot closer to the original fragrance compared to Reload Silver. Again, I'll show you the sprayer in action quickly. You get the very similar bottle design, but this one has this sort of an orange tint. Again, some frosted finish on the glass. Again, a decent sprayer. And the scent itself is way better and way closer to the original compared to the other one. This opens up in a very familiar way, just like the original fragrance opens up with some spices, a strong apple note, and the apple note in here is a lot more prominent compared to the other one. You get again a bit of some freshness, you get some of the sweetness and the spiciness of the original fragrance, and this definitely feels way closer to the original scent. Again, maybe in the opening feels slightly fresher, slightly more citrusy, lacking a bit of the sweetness and the strength of the apple note, but it's way better and way closer to the original one than the previous fragrance. Also, excuse me, what I've noticed is that on the dry down this gets very close to a Boss Bottled Intense, and actually smells very pleasant. Maybe feels a little bit more woody than the original fragrance, at least from what I remember the original fragrance smelling, but definitely this is way closer and way better. Also, I don't pick up so strong synthetic vibes out of the Intense one compared to the regular Silver one, and I think this is like way better as a fragrance. Maybe with time this will also improve, but straight out of the box this feels closer and just smells of slightly higher quality, and I like Reload Intense from Volare. The next one that I'm going to talk about will be Reload Blue, this one being inspired by Boss Bottled Tonic. So it's a fresher scent as a whole. The sprayer in here is, I don't know, probably the worst one out of the bunch. It just doesn't spray enough, it spits out some of the juice. But the scent itself is a fresher scent, it's a bluish type of scent, and it's definitely something that's more orientated towards the warmer months of the year. It opens up quite fruity and also quite fresh and citrusy. There's also some ginger note in here, you get some apple note, which is pretty much a signature note in the whole Boss Bottled series of fragrances. But in here there's some grapefruit, there's some orange as well. As I said, you get a bit of ginger, you get some spices. If you're not familiar with Boss Bottled Tonic, at least to my nose, it's always felt like somewhat similar to La Nuit de l'Homme, at least the opening of La Nuit de l'Homme. Because in here I also pick up a lavender note, some cedar wood, which gives it this sort of a creamy combination, you know, maybe a hint of cardamom as well, which is actually not listed as a note of Reload Blue, but definitely the opening feels somewhat similar to, you know, YSL La Nuit de l'Homme. Actually, it feels closer to La Nuit de l'Homme than I remember the original sitting close. On the dry down, this remains a lot fresher. Basically, this is, you know, a fresher take on the whole scent DNA of a Boss Bottled. It's on the dry down becomes a little bit woody, but you still keep some of that freshness, some of that spiciness from the opening. The ginger note is in here on the dry down as well. All around, this is a nice sort of an you know, twist on the whole scent DNA, so that it can work better in warmer conditions. Now let's move on to the slightly darker scents, the last two remaining ones. The first one is called Reload Gold. It comes in this you know, gold colored bottle, you know, matching the name itself. Now this is supposedly inspired by Boss Bottled Collector's Edition. I've never tried the original fragrance, so I won't be able to compare it to the original one, but I'll tell you what I pick up out of this particular irritation of the Reload line. It still carries a bit of that you know, signature sort of DNA of the Boss Bottled line. You still get again an apple note in here. You got a bit of freshness in the opening, some spiciness. There's maybe some pepperness in here. There's definitely a strong cinnamon note, a hint of cardamom. This also feels quite warm because it has a bit of sweetness. There's some ambery and vanillic sweetness. There's a chestnut note in here. On the dry down feels a little bit musky. It's actually a very nice scent. Again, I can't compare it to the original one because I've never tried it, but this definitely smells nice. It's sweet, it's warm, it's spicy. You also get a bit of freshness in the opening. Now, what this smells similar to me is, in a way, this smells similar to something like Dior Sauvage EDP, Dior Sauvage Parfum, maybe even because of the spiciness, the cinnamon and the pepperness. This smells a little bit like Dior Sauvage Elixir as well, but not very close to me. It actually smells closer to the Dior Sauvage Parfum and the EDP versions. Also maybe reminding me a little bit because of that chestnut note of the stronger Wichu line as well. It's a very nice, very warm, very quite sweet fragrance. That's definitely smells really nice and smells appropriate for the cold weather as well. All around, this also has a pretty decent quality. Probably the one that feels the harshest out of them all is the first one that I talked about, which is Reload Silver. But Reload Gold definitely smells quite nice. And the last one that I'm going to briefly talk about is called Reload Nuit for Men. This one being inspired by Boss Bottled Parfum. Again, it's been a while since I've tried Boss Bottled Parfum, so I won't be able to tell you how close this feels to the original, or at least you should not rely that much on my opinion on how close this smells to the original. But this is another interesting scent, another darker scent that's more appropriate for the cold weather. It opens up with a bit of sort of citrusy freshness and a bit of sweetness. There's an orange note in here that adds some freshness and at the same time some sweetness. This also feels kind of balsamic right from the opening. There's a hint of greenness in here. Feels quite woody. There's a strong leather note in this fragrance, and also there's quite a bit of sweetness as well. I would say something like ambery sweetness. Also may feel a hint powdery. I think the original one has an iris note, which this also seems to have a bit of powderness here. If you're not familiar with Boss Bottled Parfum, maybe you're familiar with Memo's African Leather. For some reason this reminds me a little bit of African Leather, although it's not so animalic as you get with African Leather, but definitely the combination of the sweet notes of the leather and the woodiness in here is, at least to my nose, somewhat similar to what you get with Memo's African Leather. It's another interesting scent again that should work really nicely in cold weather. And at the end, a few final words about the 5 fragrances that I featured in today's first impression video, and also a little bit about the brand itself. As I said, Volare is a new sub-brand from Lattafa that again seems to be mainly focusing on doing straight up clones. Now, I'm not too sure how much we actually need yet another clone sub-brand of Lattafa, because we already have Maison Alhambra, and also we have Lattafa themselves, which also tend to do quite a lot of clones. But for some reason they decided to launch another sub-brand, which they called Volare. Now, I'm still not familiar with all of their scents, but from what I've seen, they have this line of that's called Reload, that are inspired by Hugo Boss scents. They also have a line of fragrances that is inspired by Louis Vuitton original fragrances. I've seen some of their clones of Versace, of YSL as well. So again, they seem to be pretty similar to Maison Alhambra in a way that they're basically a clone sub-brand of Lattafa. But the one thing that sets them apart, at least from my first impressions, is the fact that here the overall build quality and the presentation is a little bit better compared to Maison Alhambra, and also they're not cloning the bottle design and the the box design of the original fragrances as well. Although again, the color combinations are pretty similar to what you get with the original scents, but still, at least the bottles don't look exactly the same as the original ones. Again, I'm not too sure how much we actually need yet another clone sub-brand, but that's what we get out of Volare. When it comes to the Reload line, this is pretty much a 5 fragrances that are inspired by Hugo Boss scents. If I have to point out a few that really made a good impression for me, those will be Reload Intense, Reload Blue and Reload Gold. I'm kind of digging those 3 ones. The other 2 are not bad, but especially when it comes to Reload Silver, this just especially in the opening, the first 5 to 10 minutes, feels quite synthetic, and I'm not a huge fan of that. The other 4 have good quality. As far as performance, I've literally given them only 1 wear. So far the performance seems pretty decent, but I'll give them some more wears in the future, and at some point I'm going to update you with the performance and my final thoughts on all 5 of them. So guys, in today's video I presented you a somewhat of a new sub-brand of Lattafa that's called Volare. It's yet another clone sub-brand of Lattafa, and their line of fragrances called Reload, which are all cloning Hugo Boss original scents. I hope that you found this video interesting to watch. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me tomorrow for your daily dose of some fragrance content. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.